Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Climbing Sycamores podcast, where we look at today's topics to get a better view of Christianity. I'm Annie Beege, and I'm joined by my friends Ben Sadler and Matt Harbach.
Okay, Annie's not here, so I have to introduce us. We're coming to you live. This isn't live.
It's not live.
You know what? If you guys subscribe to our Patreon, you'd be able to get it live.
Oh, jeez.
Anything for $1.
Oh, my goodness. Well, this will be a lot more boring without the golden voice of Annie, but we'll try our best. It'll be a lot less funny and a lot...
Yeah.
But.
So how about that weather, Ben? We are actually going to maybe get some snow.
Yeah, just in time for Easter,
That's
the
right.
spring. Well, do you have any Easter plans besides you're working hard right now? You're putting together set design,
Yes.
Cool.
I'll probably be here just about every day until Easter.
Yeah,
And then I'll probably go visit family and get sick and pass out.
that's right.
That's how the holidays
Well, here's the problem. You've done such a good job with kind of the stage design for the last few years, and now we just expect perfection. We expect to be wowed, and if we're not wowed, we're disappointed. So, way to go. You should have started
my helpers are getting sick.
You should have started the bar a lot lower.
I know.
And then we wouldn't have anything to.
You know what?
There's no expectations.
Next year we're gonna have nothing, and I'm gonna be like, it's the inside of the tomb. There's nothing there.
That's right. I like it. I like it. That's good. Well, that's what I want to talk about. I would like to talk about Easter. You had some thoughts on some questions that you've heard, but this is something I'm passionate about because it's kind of been a realization over the last, really over a decade maybe, that I don't think most people really understand the essence of Easter. Mm-hmm. I think we have this idea that because of Easter, somehow when we die, we go to heaven, and that's about it. That Jesus paid for all of our sins through Good Friday, and now when we die, we'll go to heaven. And something about the resurrection makes that possible, and that somehow.
And you're suggesting that the benefits of Easter are closer to us than our own death.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that. What I think we really need to focus on is what exactly is the resurrection? What exactly does it mean for us? What does it mean for all the things when it comes to Christianity? Because the message of the gospel is not just good news for when you die. And it's not just, hey, it doesn't matter what happens on this earth, as long as I die and go to heaven. That was what Easter was all about anyways. But the fact that all right, maybe I'll just start from the beginning and we'll just kind of walk through this and hear your perspective. So God creates a good world. So the world is created good. He is the one who created all the fascinating things about biology and, about our lives, our souls, our brains, all this incredible things about our good world. And then we see gaps in the system. We see poison in this world, the reality of sin and evil, and ultimately of death. And I think the fact that the devil shows up as a serpent is a great kind of, it's not a metaphor, but I think it also could be a metaphor of what the devil has done. Just like a snake, when it bites, it puts venom in your body. Like the snake has bitten this world and put venom into this world where things are dying now. And there's evil that's kind of infiltrated this good world. And so now the world and everything in it dies. And so God's response to that, the response to what happened to his good world and all the people in it, is not an escape plan. It's not, all right, the devil won, now we just need to kind of crumble up this world like a ruined project, throw it in the trash, and somehow we'll escape to this bodiless existence in heaven, wherever that is. And we're not of this world. Heaven is our home. the kingdom of God is not of this world, it's of somewhere else, and we need to stop worrying so much about this world and think about the next. Where actually what happens is God comes into this creation. He lives a perfect life in Jesus Christ. He does die as a perfect sacrifice on the cross. And then he's raised again in the body. And then Paul makes this idea, he says this over and over again. He's picking up on Isaiah's prediction and Daniel's prediction. But he says that as believers in Jesus, one day, our lowly bodies will become like Christ's glorious body. And that what happened to Jesus will happen to us and to the whole world. And the kingdom of heaven will become the kingdom of this world. And so that's the real triumph of Easter. The triumph of Easter is the resurrection, that one day all things will be resurrected, that, like it says in Romans chapter 8, this world has been enslaved and one day will be set free and liberated. So someday the world is going to be liberated in the resurrection. And so with that in mind, Paul says at the end of 1 Corinthians 15, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. So that, I think, is in contrast to this idea that there's somehow, at the end of our lives, we're just going to die and go to heaven, and everything we've done in this life and everything about this world and this creation is gone and forgotten and in vain. And the only thing that really matters is what happens to our soul after we die. And I think the resurrection shows that what we do in this life matters, because it's all going to be resurrected. And so that's what I really would like to talk about, especially on Easter. I'm going to preach on 1 Corinthians 15, and Solomon lays out this really powerful argument that life is meaningless in Ecclesiastes. He says life is meaningless because you're going to be forgotten, you're going to die. People don't remember even their great-grandparents, what they did. What you've accomplished will be taken over by someone else, and who knows what they're going to do with it. Pleasure is meaningless because after a while, the pleasure goes stale, and and accomplish is meaningless because someone else was going to accomplish something better than you and yours. So he lays out this pretty powerful argument that life is meaningless, and it's true unless the resurrection. If there is a resurrection, then what you have created is not forgotten. It's going to be resurrected. What you've done with your life is not going to be forgotten. It's somehow going to be resurrected. And that's why I think Paul says you can always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because your labor in the Lord is not meaningless, not in vain. So those are some of the thoughts that are rolling through my mind. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's like in Scripture when Jesus says, store up for yourselves treasure in heaven.
Yeah.
And that's something that I just never, it's something that you can't put your finger on.
Mm-hmm.
Because, if I do good works here on earth, that's somehow going to come back or something in heaven. In the next life. I don't know what that is though. It's very vague.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're describing is true, but it's also vague. We're not totally told how does this life equate to the next life?
Right. Well, Jesus says when you've been faithful with a few things, you'll be put in charge of many things. Yeah. That it will equate kind of, the way as a writer, Randy Elkhorn puts it, that what you believe determines where you will spend eternity, and how you live determines how you will spend eternity. Mm-hmm. And so you will, there is encouragement to make appropriate biblical godly sacrifices for the life to come, believing that what you've done will not be forgotten. It's vague in the sense of, I don't know if it's vague, it's more like we don't know, and we can trust in God's generosity and what that's going to look like. But I think the bigger point is your suffering, your pain, your sin, the evil is in no way going to be the end of the story. Mm-hmm. And the resurrection means that the best days are yet to come, because I feel like sometimes heaven, how people describe it as this like leaving of the body and going up to be in heaven somewhere, whatever that means.
Yeah, in the clouds.
Is like a consolation prize, or like, well, I didn't see my prayers answered, and I didn't see life work out here. I had this life of complete failure and all this stuff, but when I die, I'll go to heaven. Or, there's so much more I want to see, so much more I want to do, and I just don't have much time left, but, heaven's going to be okay. And the reality is, I think with the resurrection, it's like the God who made this world is going to make it again. And all the things that you love about this world, it sounds like, if you read Isaiah 65, Isaiah 66, 2 Peter 3, Revelation 21 and 22, that God is going to do it again. The Bible begins with, in the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. And the Bible ends with God saying, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And so I don't think it's vague. I think it's vague if you believe in some soul existence or whatever that means, like, bodiless existence in heaven somewhere. It's not vague if you see his creation right now. You go out and enjoy creation. You love creation, and you love relationships, and the best of this world, I think he's going to bring into especially in Romans 8.
Yeah.
He's going to liberate this world from bondage. So all the different ways that you see this world in bondage, whether it's disease or evil or sin or fear or darkness, that's all going to be liberated. And that, I think, allows us to rejoice and enjoy glimpses of God's glory in this world that's tainted. And it allows us to endure the evil and wickedness because we know the time is short.
Yeah, it just seems like it seems very weird that we don't have like I don't know. I still don't feel like I have a very clear picture of like what everything, because there's no time, right? Like, is there still time? That's the biggest thing for me.
I don't know if that's...
Is there day? Do I like get up and do things?
I think so.
But I'm not working for anything.
Why not?
Well, like, what would I be working for? I wouldn't be working here.
No, you probably won't be working. But, Jesus saying...
Just go eat fruit and bask under the trees or something?
There was work in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a part of the fallen world, to work. The toil, when work becomes toil and futile and meaningless and drudgery, that's part of sin. But work is not part of sin. And Jesus says that he talks about the parable of his second coming. He talks about giving his servants jobs to do. And he says, those of you who've given up things in my name will be in charge of other things in my name in the life to come. So I think there's going to be work. I think there's going to be things to do. It's hard for us to wrap our mind. Now, when it comes to time, I don't know if those are always helpful discussions, because I don't know in the Bible where it says that there is no time, or or that I can see that God set the sun and the moon and the stars as markers of time. But just because I have a marker of time, like a clock, doesn't mean there's no such thing as time. And just the fact that God has been around, he has no beginning or end, doesn't mean there's not a time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
When you say like you're going to have work to do, you're going to be in charge of something. Because he says, well done. You have been placed in charge of few things. I will put you in charge of many things.
Yeah.
It's like, in charge of what? I'm going to be like what? A goat herder or something?
Maybe. I don't know.
And I'm just going to wake up every day and herd goats?
You could. Do you want
to
do that?
To sleep? This
Maybe.
is what I mean by it's vague, where I don't really know.
Right.
And now I don't want to herd goats, but God, if you're listening, God, if you're out there, I don't want to herd goats.
He is. Sure, there are some limitations in what we understand, But when you go and you love fishing, and there's quiet river, a babbling brook, and you're out there enjoying creation as to its fullest, as much as you can. I think that's a glimpse, and I don't think that's vague. What I think that's all right. But then you get like bit by a mosquito.
And I get so angry.
You get so
quickly,
angry, and you're like, this, yeah. That's what it's going to be, that without getting bit by the mosquito. That's how I see it. And that's how it seems to be portrayed. The lion laying down with the lamb. That's how Isaiah talks about it. It's going to be a glimpse of the garden, and yet the garden is turned into a city in the last chapters of Revelation. So city, you think industry, you think things to do. I mean, this morning, I'm writing a paper for my class on alcoholism, and I started to research like the neurotransmitters and what's inhibited when you drink alcohol. And I went down a rabbit hole watching different things online about proteins and neurotransmitters and the GABA transmitter and the glutamate transmitter, and I'm like, there's so much here to learn. It would take me a lifetime. But what if I have eternity to learn all these things? And there's just, I think you start to think about that. There's so much to do in this life. I will never get there.
Yeah.
Well, God is endless. What he can create, what he's going to make, the things that we'll be able to explore, the things that we're going to be able to worship. What's interesting is right now our whole life really consists of solving problems, and a lot of the problems are because of sin. So it's hard for us to imagine. On one hand, we get mad at God because, God, why would you let bad things happen to good people? And yet our whole life is surrounded by solving bad things.
Yeah.
And so now we have the other problem of, well, if there's no bad things, life's going to be bored.
I'm not going to do.
Yeah, I'm not going to solve problems. But I think, so that's hard these concepts are hard for us to understand. But I think that's the trusting.
Yeah.
You trust that God, who made the world the first time, knows what he's doing, knows how this whole story is going to end up and how it's going to work. But I think Easter could be more concrete for people if they realize our lowly bodies will be like Christ's glorious body. That's pretty concrete. Now, you might have a lot more questions that might lead to more questions, but at least gives you a picture of what your resurrected body is going to be like.
So what does that, how could or should that influence us today?
I think it has huge influence. I think that's what Paul, he says, after he explains all this, he says, 1 Corinthians 15, I'm going to tell you a mystery. In a twinkling, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, you will be changed, and your lowly body will become this imperishable body, and death will be swallowed up in victory. And he says all these things, and then he says, therefore, do not be moved. Stand firm then. Do not be moved. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know your labor in the Lord is not in vain. So I think what he means by that is you can stare at all those things that Solomon stared at, and he said, this is all meaningless. And you can say, no, it's not. Because in some way, the work that I'm doing right now has a connection to the resurrected world. And one little detail that I always found, there was a guy named Andy Crouch. He's a great writer. He's written for Christianity Today, and he's written a bunch of different books. And I think it's a book called Culture Making. He makes this point that I thought was really helpful. So in Genesis chapter 2, it has these weird details about the Garden of Eden. That in the Garden of Eden, there is onyx, and there's these gold and resin and these different stones underneath the ground. And you're like, that's weird. Okay, why are you telling us this? And And so
Wait, where is that written?
in Genesis chapter 2,
Okay.
I could even read the reference, but in Genesis chapter 2, it just gives us like strange detail about gold being under the ground. Okay, well, so that's weird. That doesn't seem to do with Adam and Eve. It doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to matter. Why are you giving us this detail? So I'm just going to read it right here. So, all right. Yeah. So this is Genesis chapter 2, verse 10. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden, and from there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first was the Pishon. It winds through the entire land of the Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and onyx are also there. And it goes on to talk about the Gihon and the Tigris and the Euphrates. So it talks about this gold, resin, onyx. Why would you tell us what's buried underneath this God's creation there? And then you go to the last page of the Bible, Genesis chapter 21 and Genesis chapter 22.
Revelation.
I'm sorry. Revelation, thank you. And Revelation chapter 21, it talks about the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven. It's shown with brilliance. And its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like jasper. It had 12 gates. Okay. The angel measured the wall using a human measurement. It was 144 cubits thick. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. The foundations of the wall were decorated every kind of precious stone: jasper, sapphire, agate, emerald, onyx, ruby, topaz. So it goes through all these different. So I think when Andy Crouch makes this point, and I think he's right, that it's showing that God's world is going to be cultivated, that in some way the world as it is right now is going to have connection to the world as it's going to be. And we're going to go from a garden to a city. It's going to be from yes, we've had a really hard interruption of sin and death, and but the end of the story is that God is going to use all of this, and it's going to be cultivated into a city. Now, there's a lot of unanswered questions there, but I think there's some interesting thoughts when you have gold and onyx and resin and all these things underneath the ground, and at the end of Revelation, the resurrected world is made with those same items and precious metals, but they've been cultivated and they've been put into the city. I don't know, how do you understand that?
Boy, the city of like gold and stuff, I've read that before, and like that's just a weird one to me. It's just like a whole, because it's just described as like a big cube made of gold and like.
And why is that?
Pearls and whatnot, and
why is that?
Why the city's a cube?
Yeah,
I don't know. Because
the Holy of Holies was a cube.
Oh,
and that was the place that no one could go inside.
Sure.
And now the whole world is in the holy. The whole world is the Holy of Holies. Now everybody's inside the presence of God.
The cube.
We're all inside of where.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is our story is a continuing story. It's not a disjointed story. It's a story that's it's very similar to what J.K. Rowling was trying to do with Harry Potter, that it was this epic story of fighting against evil, and it had to go through a death and a resurrection.
Yeah.
And it's a continuation. And what Harry Potter did in the early chapters of the first book mattered in the last chapter, what we're doing now matters in the life to come. So what I think, back to your original question, how does this affect my life? And somehow what I'm doing is it's putting a brick in the renewed world, in that new city. And somehow what I'm doing is connected to the life to come. You're talking about quoting Matthew 6, where Jesus talks about, storing up treasures in heaven. And then Revelation says heaven comes down to earth and it's all recreated. So it's not in vain. Now, if you do things just for yourself and for your own glory, Paul says that will be burned up like straw.
Yeah.
But if you build your life on Christ and you work with Him and in service, like that's building your life on a foundation that will be purified through the flames of God's return, but not destroyed.
Sort of throwing a monkey wrench into
Yeah.
my plan for becoming exorbitably wealthy
Yeah.
for my own gain here.
Yeah. It's not gonna help.
You're telling me that's not going to work
It's
out?
not gonna work out well for you.
This is
I mean,
news.
go ahead and be wealthy, but I don't know if that's gonna work out. You just stay here. So I do think, how much money, we're all wealthy if we're Americans in comparison with history and the rest of the world. But if you think I can hold on to this and that somehow there's a contrast. Randy Alcorn in his book, The Treasure Principle, talks about this too, that, the contrast of a Christian missionary who spent his life giving and serving and was buried in a unmarked tomb in the middle of India or something like that. And he contrasts that with the Egyptian pharaohs buried with all their gold and treasure. And at the last day, what is that going to look like?
Right.
What is their life going to look like on the last day when they're resurrected? All that gold and treasure you thought you could hold on to by burying yourself with it is going to be gone.
Yeah.
And that life of this man pouring out his life in service to God and service to others, he's living for the life to come.
Yeah.
And so Randy Alcorn says it this way: you can't take it with you, but you can send it on ahead. So you can't hold on to this wealth as it is right now. Yeah. It's going to be resurrected and burned up and all these kinds of things, but it, in some way in the life to come in the resurrected world, it's going to come back to you.
You mentioned Harry Potter, and I think what's really interesting is if you look at like literature and movies, that resurrection motif is just everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
And that's why we always that's why so many characters we call like Christ-like figures or pictures of Christ, and how even though none of us has ever seen a resurrection, we all understand it. And so that makes sense because God himself was resurrected. We're going to be resurrected, and the whole earth is going to be resurrected. Yeah. And whether you're Christian or you believe in like reincarnation or something like that, or like everyone has that reverence for resurrection, even though it's never something we can observe. Right.
It's this desire, this longing, and in Jesus Christ it happened, and that this great longing that we have, because man, being at so many grave sites and deathbeds and doing so many funerals, there's just so much regret.
Yeah.
And so many unmet goals, unkept promises, so much failure, so much, shame and guilt. And what God is promising is not just a get out of guilt card.
Yeah.
But a resurrection. And that's making all the sad things come untrue, undoing. I did a funeral for a man who he had it's a neurological disease. He's had it his whole life, and it's hereditary, and it got worse and worse as he progressed. And he faithfully, he never had a bad day. Like this guy, I was just so upbeat, so positive. He didn't let his disease define him. But the resurrection means all those all the limitations that he had endured for so many years, all those things because of sin in this world are going to be fully undone with a resurrected body. I mean, and we saw a picture of that. I mean, we were seeing him in hospice, and it was the first time he was able to lay still without tremors because he was sedated. But it was like, oh, he's peaceful. And that's what it's going to be like in the resurrection. He's going to finally be able to have control of his renewed body. So it doesn't solve all of our questions that we it sometimes maybe creates more questions, but it does still give us a goal. And I don't know how much you want to read into this, but when Jesus' body was resurrected, he still had scars. Mm-hmm. Something about his life pre-death was carried into his body as a resurrected body. And why did he do that? Well, they were markers of what he did for us. And I think there's going to be markers in the life to come of what we've done in God's name. And so again, I don't think we think about this at this level.
No.
But it does make your faith and your day-to-day life also gives incredible meaning and purpose to it. And it's not, this world no longer becomes like this waiting room to the divine, but this is life. Mm-hmm. The kingdom of heaven is near right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's good. I think for a while I always thought that like heaven was just the finish line. Mm-hmm. It's like just hold on till you until you die, and then you'll be okay.
Right. And I think that creates, then you live a life that doesn't have much meaning right now. I've used the illustration. Some people like it, some people don't. But that whole idea of if you were on the Titanic and you knew the Titanic was going down, mm-hmm. you'd probably spend your whole time just making sure you were close to the life rafts, mm-hmm. and you wouldn't mm-hmm. enjoy the music or the food or whatever. It's like, you know what? Soon I know what's going to happen. We're going to hit this iceberg. Mm-hmm. We're going to go down. I want to be close to the life raft. And the only thing that matters right now is not the music or not that we're on this boat. Now we're doing this great trip, but that I'm on the life raft. I think that's how lots of people look at this world. Like this world, I know, hey, I got this insider information as a Christian that this world is going to go down. Yeah. And so my job is just play it safe.
Motivates you to save yourself.
Right. So I'm just going to stay close to the life raft, Jesus. But what if the story is a lot more like Extreme Makeover Home Edition?
I know the show.
Okay, all right. It was kind of the precursor to all the home reno shows.
Yeah.
And, they had a house that at one time was good, and then over the years it got bad, and now somebody was going to come in and resurrect it. Mm-hmm. And they were going to, what was that guy's name?
Ty Pennington.
There. Ty would come in.
Friends at Sears.
Yeah, that's right. And so he was going to come in and he was going to redo this house in a week. And there's a lot of talk about how badly built these houses are. So that's kind of where my illustration breaks down. But that's more of the story. Now, if that's your story, what are you going to do? You're going to get involved in the renovation. Mm-hmm. You're not going to destroy this house because it's going to be renovated. Some things are going to be different. Like, all right, maybe I'll enjoy this kitchen right now, but it's probably going to be knocked down and redone anyway. So take care of the plumbing as much as I can or whatever. But I'm going to get involved in my house because this house is going to be renovated. It's my house. And it's got a great story, and right now it's kind of broken down, and I gotta patch the holes as well as I can until they come in and renovate it. But I have a lot different connection with that. So I think those are like the two different ways, and I see a lot more people kind of have that Titanic perspective on Christianity, versus a renovation idea.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to hold on to the finish line. I think I've thought that way too.
Yeah, but that's back to why we're talking about this. That's the difference of Easter, and that's why Paul says it's not in vain.
Yeah.
And that's why what we do here matters.
Yeah.
And then Paul, I mean, if you look at the whole book of Paul's letters to the Corinthians, it seemed like they had this kind of disconnect with what they did with their body and what happened to their souls. And so he says, they said, oh, if I sleep with a prostitute, that's just my body. I'm not actually doing anything with my soul. And he's like, no, your body's a temple of the Holy Spirit, and your body's going to be resurrected. So don't unite your body with a prostitute. So this all of a sudden, just becomes the whole lens you look at the world through and how you look at your life. And so I think Easter changes everything, because what happened to Jesus is going to happen to you and happen to the whole world. So these are a lot of ideas I'm formulating. I never said it exactly like that when it came to Titanic, like that you would know that what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think maybe I'm going to have to use that on Easter now, that illustration.
I wonder if, when you have that viewpoint that you're thinking in terms of like, I got to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got to almost save myself, or like I got to be ready for when Jesus comes so I can kind of grab onto the life raft.
Yeah.
Whereas what the Bible really says is that you are completely free now.
Right. Yes.
And so
get involved.
Get out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get involved in the work that you're doing. What you're doing matters. Get to the work of rebuild. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus showed pockets of the resurrection in his whole life. He didn't heal everybody, but he healed people, and they got sick again. He resurrected Lazarus, and he died again. And yet these little pockets of healing was him bringing the kingdom. He's bringing this new kingdom, and the kingdom of God that's going to come on the last day was starting to break in through Jesus even now. And that's, I think, our job as we live out as salt and light, keep this world from going bad. That's what salt does, and light, bringing truth to the world, is that we're allowing, through the resurrection of Jesus and his forgiveness and grace and the work of his Holy Spirit, we're bringing a little pocket of the world to come into this world right now. And, it's all going to be burned up. But the way that Paul talks about it and Peter talks about it, it seemed like more of a refiner's fire than a complete, utter destruction.
Yeah.
And I think that changes the way you live. It's meaningful. It matters eternally.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy. Not as funny. We miss you, Annie. It'll be much more enjoyable when she comes back.
Probably, yes.
All right.
Peace out.
All right, bye.
If you'd like to get a hold of us here at the Climbing Sycamores podcast, feel free to email bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. bsadler@victoryofthelamb.com. If you like today's intro music, it's been brought to you by Andrew Lynch's song, My Name. Hello.